chapel service and our morning activities. Awesome little trip. And yes, this does.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh shit.
Hi.
I think you'll be surprised. We have some of the same stuff from last year, but some new stuff as well. We also have our assortment of drinks and snacks and stuff if you guys want to get something to snack on. You're choosing.
Send me that pic you took yesterday.
Yeah, I'm seeing about 3 of you right now.
You said it.
Hey!
Greetings. I'm looking forward to getting a workout this weekend. Gotta stay in shape to do good. Hi.
Wow.
Nice doing business.
After a nice trip to the general store, the group heads out to the lake, Lake Hudson, for some awesome lakeside activities.
Hello, Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can I help you? Great. Sir, I'm happy to say it's now ready for you at our nearest harbor.
So, out of character real quick, the campers weren't the ones driving the boats. I'm just doing this to kind of emulate what we did on the lake. Although it should be noted that we obviously didn't have boat races and stuff. Instead, what we did was there was a jet ski that was hooked up to an airhead, which was a two-person inflatable device that people held onto for dear life to avoid slipping off and, getting into the lake. Thankfully, all of us were wearing life jackets and lake shoes, so there's that. As for why I chose this boat, the Swallow, it's simply because of the fact that they used a bigger boat to tow the banana boat, which was a larger inflatable that was very top heavy, so it could tip over very easily if we made a sharp enough turn. They also had this inflatable area. It was like these floating plastic dock things where they had canoes, which I loved. I think it wasn't until 2006 or 2007 that I rode the air. I never rode the banana boat because I was always afraid that they might forget me in the haste of like grabbing everyone else. But as I've come to realize now as an adult, they wouldn't have done that. That would have been incredibly irresponsible. And it should also be noted that obviously they wouldn't be driving the boats like this at all. Because for one, they're towing something, so obviously there would be a lot of drag involved. Like even for the jet ski, they would have to drive it at a reasonable pace to avoid, pushing the engine into its limits. The general store thing where I went to that convenience store, in reality what it was is it was a Old West themed store that had cowboy themed merchandise like hat guns of different varieties, candies, snacks, slushies. I freaking loved those. They also had DVD. No, I think they did have DVDs. They had DVDs of the different shows that were filmed there way back in the day, and they also had CDs of the songs that they had at summer camp for that respective year. Which is always pretty cool. But after that, it should be noted that across all 5 visits that I went to Dry Gulch on, the visit to the general store was always the middle of the week. However, for 2008, because every session that year was a 4-day trip, so for that year and the following year, which was also my final year to go, our church left on a Thursday, and for 2008, that meant that we came back on Sunday. But for 2009, it was Monday. So that following Monday, the other 3 years that I went, so 5, 6, and 7, was 2005, 2006, and 2007. I'm going to make a dumb joke. Trust me, I do not like the thick joke. Like, it was never funny, right? And I'm glad that that kind of stuff wasn't around when I was a kid. I'm not saying it's offensive, it's just, it's annoying. Like, why can't we just make actually good jokes? Anyway, we're getting sidetracked from the topic at hand. For those first 3 years of the 5 years that I went, we left on a Sunday and would come back on Thursday that week. So, 4 of the 5 years that I went, it was a 5-day trip. So we would leave on, well, again, for the first 3 years that I went, it was a Sunday. And then that coming Thursday would be the day that we would come back. So, realistically speaking, it was more like a 4-day trip if you think about it, because it would be an accumulative total of like 6 hours of riding the bus, because you would have the ride to the McDonald's that we would eat at on the way there, and then the remainder of the trip was just getting to fireworks. Not Adair. Sorry, it was Adair. Yeah, that's literally how you pronounce it. As a kid, I always thought it was Adair, but I mean, it's technically correct to say that way. But anyway, yeah. So, general store would be the middle of the week. I believe for 2008, it was either the second or third day of the trip. So that'd be like the first or second full day that we were gone. which obviously I think everyone can agree with me is saying, yeah, 3 full activity days is omit doing 2008 whenever I get around to it, which obviously that's going to be 2028, but whatever. But yeah, anyway, um, there's also a chance this game might not even be around anymore then. But anyway, yeah. So after the general store, we would go to the lake, and the lake was really cool. The activities there were fun. They had a really cool slide there that wasn't like the slides of the swimming pool. Instead, it was a slide that was made out of like a sort of tarp-like material, and they had like a pair of hoses that sprayed water down onto it. And the slide had a name too. It was called the Wet Willy, and it was really freaking cool. Like it was really fast. And so obviously, like my first year going to camp, I didn't ride it because I was afraid of going really fast. And that's also why when it came to the swimming pool, I would ride every single slide except the bullet, which was this one slide that was enclosed. So you start the ride at the top of that slide, and it's completely enclosed. Like it's a tunnel. Is basically what I'm saying. Not enclosed like they put you in a capsule and drop you off. But no, the reason why that slide was called the bullet was because of the fact that it was a sudden drop off that was so quick that it's over before you even realize. And you make a gigantic splash in the water. And so everyone just called it the bullet because you shot out, well, like a bullet. The other slides were the twin loops, which were two smaller slides for the younger kids, although obviously bigger kids could still ride them too. And then the biggest of the bunch was the hurricane, as everyone called it, because it was twisty and turny like a hurricane. But getting back to the lake, they had canoes there, not wooden, no, bleh, not plastic canoes. They were metallic canoes, like a lightweight metal. I think it was like aluminum or something. I don't remember. But then they had this really cool inflatable thing that someone would sit on one end of, and then someone else would jump from a high vantage point and land on the empty side and make the other person like fly up in the air. And that was just called the fly. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's already nighttime anyway, so I'm just gonna pretend I did that. Pretend I did that. No, pretend I didn't do that. I don't know. I don't know why I'm. uh, okay, in fairness, the only other thing I could have done was just. Okay, hold on. Let me. Alright. Okay, I'm sorry y'all had to see me do that when I was. Uh, I mean, granted, I'm out of character, and I was trying to, like, you know, signify that I'm done with the boat, but. Anyway, yeah. So, I believe it was the first 2 or first 3 years that I went, but the middle of the week at night we would have a train ride around the camp where I think what it was is okay, so across all the 5 years that I went, because in 2008 and 2009 it was actually the first night that we were there. So we're just talking about the first 3 years right now. it would be the middle of the week that we were there. After chapel service, um, we would go to the train station at the camp to ride the train, which was an authentic steam locomotive, by the way, which is insanely cool. And so you're probably thinking, okay, well, what's so cool about that? So, as I've come to understand it now, um, I believe there was an interwoven story with the train ride, but it was mostly just talking about the same lesson that we've been learning at the chapel throughout the trip. So each day and night we would have more lessons that would talk about the overall message of the theme for that year, which 2005 it was Ask Me I Know, which is, I believe, supposed to be about spreading the gospel that, you know, Jesus died for our sins. And yes, I'm here to say, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm not one of those Bible thumping Christians that's going to be like saying stupid crap, you know. Ask Me I Know was the, I mean, no. Ask Me I Know was 2005. 2006 was, It's Not New. And it's just talking about how Jesus never really gives up on any of us. So obviously the lessons that we learned throughout the camp for each of those years is reflective of the theme song. So, yeah. So basically, think of the train ride as a mixture between an interwoven storyline of a villain named Old Mean Spitting Joe. Or, I'm sorry, let me do the proper cowboy adage. Old Mean Spitting Joe! There we go. And it makes sense because I'm a Texan. Okay, I kid you not. I think this was 2005 when this happened. So, this is something that's actually kind of funny. You're gonna laugh. So, it hurts him.
Piss off, asshole.
Eat shit!
Was a villain that I believe has always been there, or it might have been something that they added in the more recent years. Because I know he was introduced at some point, or it might have always been the case. But okay, from my recollection of him, because you got to remember this is 20 years ago that I'm talking about. And if we're going by 2005, it's 21 years ago, which means, hey, my first visit is old enough to drink. Ha ha ha. But from my understanding and my recollection, I believe that what they did at certain points during the train ride, which for obvious reasons, we're not going to be riding the actual train in GTA, because that would be really stupid. Like, don't get me wrong, it would be appropriate to ride the freight train, but at the same time, I just opted for, this. But anyway, so, sorry for being quiet, I'm just, sorry about that. Anyway, so, um, at certain points during the train ride, they would play Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, which is one of my favorite bands of all time, by the way. And it's also thematically appropriate with the fact that it's a Christian band. And anytime they played that, there would be some staff, I think dressed as cowboys or something, with water guns that would spray us with water. And they would be like hooting and hollering and stuff. It was so much fun. Um, so, there's that. It was great fun. Uh, but I believe that the concept of Old Mean Spittin' Joe wasn't actually a thing until 2009, if I'm not mistaken. And it's important to note that I know this because of the fact that that year they introduced the night hike on, I believe, the final night that we were there. So this would be like Sunday night that year. And what would happen is that, wait, hold on. Oh, come okay, that worked. Anyway, sorry, I was trying to get that out of the way. Um, yeah, so Old Mean Spittin' Joe was, I believe, first introduced in 2009, so the whole villainous outlaw thing that I put in the description might be misleading, but it's more so because of the fact that I am integrating that year into this trip. So, yeah. Um, just just note that it may be inaccurate, but I want to make sure that it's kind of true to life with how the later years were. So, yeah. Anyway, so the actual train ride itself was incredibly fun. You know, like, you're riding a train, dude. Like, a freaking steam train. You know, you'll hear its horn, like, whir, whir. I can't do a train horn to save my life. But yeah, so there's that. You have the fact that we were sprayed with water by people. It was fun. And then after all that, we would go back to our cabins and get some sleep. And yeah, so I know the stream wasn't the longest. I know, but it was so incredibly fun. Tomorrow will be the penultimate day, where it's just, winding down stuff. And so, you know, all that'll be is just, I don't know. I think for tomorrow it'll just be BC spending time in the dorm right here, the cabin, which I know doesn't really look Wild Western, but whatever. Um, we'll make it work, but it's just him at the end of the day getting his stuff collected and ready to go for the morning, because day 5 is the day that everyone goes home and tells their folks all about how their trip went and how much fun they had. But with that being said, thank you very much for watching nonetheless. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. It's not required by any means, but it is certainly appreciated. That being said, though, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all tomorrow for the penultimate day of this fun little trip to camp.